Hey everyone, Georgie here with Ukraine Matters. This time, no clickbait, no double meanings, because Russia indeed finds itself deep inside Ape Guano. The common knowledge about the war states that one cannot be strong everywhere, or one can be strong everywhere, but for a very short time. In this case, Russia was indeed weak, and now this weakness shows because Ukraine was able to find where the weakness is. And right now, Russia is scrambling to try to do anything that they can to close this weakness. I'm, of course, talking about the situation that developed on the Kherson area. Here we have a plethora of good news. Firstly, Ukrainians have been slowly expanding their control over this settlement, over this bridgehead around Oleshki. So Ukrainians are there in a position ready to pounce. Then Ukrainians are now controlling this position right here around Kosachyi Lahiri. And with all what Russia has been trying to do, they still did not succeed. And this is a big payoff for a lot of things. Firstly, this is a payoff for all of those people that were questioning whether or not Western style training is useful. Does Ukraine make use of it? Because what happened here, now we know the details, is that Ukrainian UK Royal Marine trained special ops were able to execute naval landing with smaller boats. They were able to properly capture the territory, engage forces here despite being outnumbered, and establish a proper holding position. Since then, it's been reinforced by regular light soldiers, and now Ukrainians are slowly but surely expanding this beachhead. This is amazing news, mostly because right now Russia understood that they want to be strong. And biggest troubles where so far Ukraine was giving them was on the Zaporizhia and Donetsk southern axis. This is where a lot of the Ukrainian effort was concentrated, and this is where, as I explained before, Russia dedicated pretty much all of their reserves that they had dedicated for Ukrainian offensive. Now Russia finds themselves in a situation where Ukrainians have assaulted their positions on the Kherson region. And what they were having there, if you remember some time ago, I was telling you that Russians do not run from these Zaporizhia and Donetsk South oblasts because a lot of the locally mobilized troops were intermixed with a lot of really tough, really experienced soldiers. And the presence of those really experienced soldiers allowed a lot of Russian forces, in combination with extensive preparation and minefields, to hold their ground for quite a while. Not the case on Kherson axis. What we found out more and more is that in this region, on Kherson, Russia mostly had mobilized troops, pure mobiks, pure people that had seen little action and are very limited in their ability to control the ground. But the hope was that even with their poor morale, even with their poor skills, they would still be able, thanks to the river, to hold off Ukrainian forces. As we now see, these poorly trained, not very experienced troops are highly susceptible to tactics of extensive special forces. You know, something like UK Royal Marines have trained Ukrainians in more complex operations. And they fell for pretty much all of the tricks in the book that Ukrainian Special Forces and UK Royal Marines have prepared for them. And this is great because at this area, Russia does not have extensive fortifications. There are no big settlements that would allow Russia to hold position. There are no hills or high points. It's all super, super flat. Super, super flat. So you see horizon to horizon. And this is basically open area. And most importantly, the most terrible news for Russian because open area is really good for mechanized warfare. And the problem that Russians are having is because Ukrainians were dedicating a lot of forces here, most of their mechanized units were dedicated to the south, and a lot of them were also dedicated to the north for the offensive operation. And obviously Bakhmut as well. There also Russian forces are experiencing. Whereas in the area, this south, when Ukrainian forces have actually entered on the shores, when they were able to establish positions, they were expecting that they will be attacked with some kind of mechanized assault, that there will be tanks, that there will be APCs that's going to drive to him. Nothing happened whatsoever. They were having light assaults directed at them. Artillery is scarce in this region. Remember when Ukraine was cutting and committing genocide on Russian artillery? We now know where Russia took that artillery from, where they took the artillery from to help sustain the efforts on the southern Zaporizhia level, southern Zaporizhia axis. They were taking it from Kherson area. Because what else was reported is that artillery that Ukrainian forces have seen on this area, this side of the river, was mostly mortars, and Russia is now actively substituting artillery deficit with aviation. So right now there is a lot of aviation that is working on Ukrainian forces that are trying to hold on to that territory. And most importantly, right now Russians are very worried about Hola Pristan. There are rumors that Ukrainians potentially are planning something, and Russians are extremely worried. As I said before, I'm expecting that Ukrainians will try to create another beachhead over here to help sustain their assault further on. But you don't need to be super smart or super knowledgeable to understand if you have limited resources and if you dedicate them somewhere, that means that they will not be available elsewhere. So what happened was that Russia dedicated a lot of resources here, and Ukrainians have now poked and succeeded in establishing a threat on this area. And this area is extremely devastating for Russians, because as soon as Ukraine can reach Henichesk and this area here, that's it. Everything that is south, all these Tokmak, all of these, every village that is here, like Tokmak, Melitopol, Vasilievka, and all of these extensive Russian fortifications, completely useless, absolutely useless, because they don't serve anything anymore. There is no sustaining this southern direction without Crimean access. I want to cover something that I covered on my live streams, but I think it's worth mentioning in a special video just because more people watch videos. A lot of people are looking at the map and how Ukraine was advancing in this offensive, and they're drawing very linear conclusions because of that. People are really... It's counterintuitive to understand proportions. It's not fully clear that the first part of this road is harder than everything else that it's getting. And when people are looking at the map, they see Ukraine moved this much in 2 months. That means it's another 2 months here, and then another 2 months, 2 months, 2 months, 2 months, 2 months, 2 months, 2 months. And it ends up to a lot. And people look at this and say, oh, there is no chance Ukraine will be able to achieve anything just because it's going to take over a year until they reach Mariupol. This is not the case for many reasons. Firstly, let's start from beginning and start from afar. Ukraine needs to achieve its goals, and the goals are to cut supplies of equipment, to cut supplies of troops, to cut supplies of everything that Russia have on this southern direction to help isolate Crimea. To do that, Ukraine needs to focus on this road right here, because this is the road that supplies. People that know how Ukrainian roads look like, they know that if it's not a highway, then any kind of heavy transport better not even try doing it. It's going to be a nightmare. So Ukraine needs to get in range of this road. Range for Ukrainian artillery with all their advanced systems is about 40 kilometers that they need. But let's say a lot of leeway. Let's say Ukraine needs only 25 kilometers to reach this road, so they establish a proper fire control over the road, and then Russians, whatever they try to deliver something, it's going to end up. So there is not going to be any logistics supplied for the Russians, and it's going to be pretty bad. So we take our measurements, and we take for the Velika Novosilka axis. This is where Ukrainians are advancing, right? So we'll take this line. So we take from this road, we put our measurement, and we measure about 25 kilometers. This is where we end up. This is where we end up. So Ukrainians need to reach approximately this line to establish effective control with their barreled artillery to control this supply line, and then further artillery can help with every smaller roads. They will be able to destroy and target pretty much everything and anything. So this will be already a win for Ukrainians. Then there is another thing to consider. Something that I've learned while following this war, and kind of everyone also knows that we just don't pay attention, is that who controls the high ground controls pretty much everything. And southern situation is very particular because it's quite easy on how the ground works. If I switch to this topographic map view, I know it's in Cyrillic, but follow me here. Oh, no, okay, I cannot do full screen because then I cannot draw. But here you can see this is Mariupol. And you'll notice this red right here, and there is like a black line here that is going all right in the middle of this red. So red is high ground. And this line that goes there is actually a railway, and I'll show you on the other map. But what you need to see from that, once you see this red, everything that is below this red is up for the taking. So it's a pure downhill. So once Ukraine reaches this high point and establishes themselves there, that means that they will have a lot easier job to control everything that is south of it. So if we switch back to our map, this is our previous line, and you see this white line here. This is exactly the same railroad we saw just earlier. So that means that actually Ukraine don't even need right away to reach this line over here. If they reach this railroad, they will already be on the high ground on the top. And from there, whatever the situation, even if it's not going to be a complete win, it's still a dominant position from which Ukraine will slowly but surely push Russians out just because they have a dominant position in this region. So now we have already a little bit more understanding. So you see how this already cut more than in half Ukrainian advances. And now we're looking at this one. So right now, Ukraine are approaching Zavitne Bazhanya. Zavitne Bazhanya, Russians are saying they will not hold. Right now, all of the discussion on Russia Telegram is saying that Zavitne Bazhanya is impossible to hold. And after that, there is only Staromlinivka. And from there, then there is the defense lines. So Ukrainians actually right now will have 1 and 2 points of Russian control. After that, if you look closely enough, there are settlements, there are some fortifications, but there are no major defenses. There will be some certain slowdowns, but generally speaking, from here to here, that's it. That's very, very close. To sum up, while we're looking at the map and see that Ukraine has to do a lot of other things, in reality, they have one strong point, two strong points, and then just a little bit of a grind to take this top position around the railway. And after that, Ukraine, without even talking that Ukraine will be able to reach anything and as they want, because it's going to be operative freedom. As you can see, Russians know that. That's why there are no defenses over here, because Russians understand that once Ukraine reaches this railroad, that's it. And Russians have front-loaded a lot of their defenses. So while it is hard to for us to understand proportions, that it's the front-loading part that is actually hard, this is in fact the case. So once Ukraine takes over these strong points, that's going to be a break. That's going to be a break in Russian defenses. Thank you so much for watching this, guys. I hope it was useful. We've reached 100,000 mark, and it's incredible. I wrote a lengthy community post, and I will probably record a video somewhere else. You should check out my second channel. The link will be in the description. But what I want to say is that we have a lot of prizes that I want to give to you, such as, for example, this flag, and there is another flags, and some of the other more nicer things. And I'm right now preparing how we can do a raffle for it, how we can make sure that you will get some of those cool features that to support Ukraine. And to participate in this raffle, the only thing that you will need to do is from the 13th of August, where I was able to reach 100,000 thanks to you. From that time until the end of August, donate to known charities that will be in the description, or any other support for Ukrainian armed forces, and you are eligible to participate in this lottery. After that, we'll find a way how you can submit yourself to the participant list, and we'll do a raffle in one of the streams and make sure I notify everyone that there wins. Stay tuned for the news. Watch my second channel. I love you all. Slava Ukraini, and I'll see you next time.